Good morning, everybody. Well, I think it's a good morning. It's not a bad morning here. Welcome back to the shed. It's been a long time since I did one of these, so I apologize in advance if I'm a little bit rusty. Yeah, and also trying to put together the idea for this one. What I really am realizing is that we are being asked for things, and it's a bit like Hollywood blockbusters. You know, someone comes up with an idea, and there's always 2 or 3 films with the same general premise handled in different directions. And that's the kind of trend that we're seeing at the moment in terms of the phone rings or the email pings, and it's somebody saying, hey, look, we've got somebody who wants to do something a bit like this. And from that perspective, we land up kind of coming up with an answer. And it's kind of dawned on us that these actually make quite good packaged conversations for you guys that we should share. We should definitely have more of a community around what we're working on. But also at the moment, one of the really big focuses internally within Selecttech is commercial. I have to be honest, it's commercial. It's about the conversations that we're having with partners, specifically within the MPS or the copier channel or the MFD channel, whatever you want to call them, around the challenges facing the market and their deals, specifically what's going on with their hardware sales, what's going on with service volumes, what's going on with all of that. So what I'm going to try and do today is, yes, we're going to poke some software. We're going to take a look at something actually working. Although it's not going to be a massively deep thing, to be fair, because this is software that we have used in conjunction previously in other WebExes, but it's just putting it into a bit of a new shape. I am, however, going to introduce a new thing, a Selecttech thing, which is us starting to grow out our interactions with our much loved PaperCut product, and how to start to trigger customer projects and sales activities based on that PaperCut customer list that you already have. Something we're quite happy with, and this is going to be the first really public outing of it today. So from difficult to digital, idea around this one, well, do you know what, let's just follow my track. It isn't going to be all PowerPoint, guys, but I have put a few slides together as much as anything to remind me where we're going. And again, my agenda slide, I've only got one, I use it every time, but why are we doing it, what are we doing, how do we do it, and where do we see it happening? So let's just really fast go through our why. Our why is probably quite a lot like your why. All these reports right now in terms of the volumes, in terms of the devices, and when this was actually written, the first time I used this slide, which was just around the end of lockdown 1.0, I think we're at 1.1 at the moment, but we'll see. The offices hadn't come back, and I think we were all waiting to see whether they would, but the decline in printed pages, the decline in interaction with copiers and devices, MFDs, I'm old, so there'll always be copiers to me, was there, and it doesn't seem to be changing, because I think we all kind of hoped that the world was going to go back when the schools went back, and that has not happened. So this data, if anything, is much more towards the right-hand column, and much less pretty in, if that's even possible, in the left-hand column. But what we are seeing further down the road now, even though it's only probably another quarter down that road, is that this is already having an impact on the hardware sales and the upgrade of machines and so on. And we're seeing quite a lot of devices and feedback around the fact that the deals that are being done are around device consolidation, volume reduction, where TVPs are in place, and all sorts of things like that, which does actually create an opportunity in a backwards kind of a sense. What was interesting for me was that these reports, when we started talking to them, they were all industry press. They were Quocirca. There's a debate in Selecttech about how you say Quocirca or Quocirca or whoever the hell they are, and Gartner, and Thunder said, and people like that were all very industry focused. What's interesting for me now is that this has become mainstream, or at least if you consider The Guardian to be mainstream. And it's outside of the IT industry that this is being represented. Regis has just decided that it's going to divest itself of 4% of its property portfolio from centres of offices. For example, The Guardian is writing about studies from the British Council of Offices, things like that, And this 48% number, which came from the Gartner release around the number of organizations that will now work from home compared to 30% pre-pandemic. It's about 14% of the workforce, or about 4 million people in the UK alone who will now be working from home, at least for some of their time, that were not before. And this is now not just an IT topic. This is happening. Slack is actually advertising on mainstream TV for remote workplace. And it's just making those paper processes feel a little bit old school. The stuff that we took for granted for years and years and years, and then suddenly it doesn't exist anymore. We need to do something different. So that's really our focus. It's not doom and gloom though, because a couple of the things that have come out of this last couple of weeks commercially, and I realize this may be a more technical audience, but from a commercial perspective, is there are opportunities in this, very significant opportunities actually, to revise what hardware looks like, revise what other things look like, and more importantly, expand your share of wallet with the existing customers you have. It's something that we're focusing very hard on in Selecttech. It's a real focus of the team. They are loving spending time with me at the moment, talking about how to do various different contractual things and maths and all sorts of other stuff. I'm not Selecttech's favorite person, but I do see some really strong opportunities. And in our industry at the moment, to be able to stand up and say, hey guys, I think there are some opportunities out there, feels like a real positive thing to be talking about. So I'm quite happy in that regard. And it's Friday, so 2 happy levels right now. So there we go. I've just got some warnings from Zoom. There's some stuff happening in chat, but I'm hoping that the panelists are picking that stuff up, which is cool. Okay, so what are we talking about? Well, big unicorns, but blank screen. The reality, guys, is most of the partners that we speak to on a day-to-day basis have sold hardware. In reality, you've probably got that hardware hooked up to a network. I guess if I ask any of you how many non-network devices you've got out there, you could count them on the fingers of one hand. And you probably already have those devices doing some kind of scanning, doing some kind of interaction with the network and the user. And it's probably around mail. A vast percentage of transactions done this way are done around email. Anyone who spent any time with me will be bored of my speech around not using email to transmit documents. And from a sales strategy, learn that, because you can talk to customers and they will agree with you. I have yet to find a customer that does not agree with me in terms of the pain of using email to transmit documentation. You hopefully have got some print management in there. You probably got PaperCut, because why would you use anything else? And you can buy that from us, and we're lovely. So that's another positive for it. I would buy PaperCut simply to talk to Ben. And he's not going to answer me because he's off doing something else. So I've slid that in there that he's there. That was sarcasm, just in case anyone was wondering. But you've probably got the hardware, you're interacting with the network, you're transmitting some documents. You may or may not have talked about that document process, probably managing the devices. Now you might even be looking at some infrastructure tools above that, such as the Hive stuff and things that we are looking at. And if you're one of the brave ones, you've probably even started to broach the subject around ECM and document archiving and capture. Of course, we have the Square 9 product set for that, but we are very much aware of the ratio of ECM to print management to desktop environments, and that ratio being there. However, we're very aware that document processing is a market that now needs to happen because the people aren't in the offices. Those paper processes were people walking around. So there's our opportunity. And those processes are actually a lot more simple than you might think. And we're going to look at one of those today, but they are real critical problems that we just haven't thought about. We've accelerated past them. Workflow tools. So document processing, some hardware can do some basic processing. PaperCut even has some basic functionality in there around doing some OCR and stuff, but routing that and getting smart about what that looks like and making that efficient, there's a real opportunity there, and it can be very useful for leveraging those commercial returns. And the big one again is, how do I start to interact with people who are not physically in the offices? And the most important piece, I guess, for this, obviously PaperCut does some clever things from a print perspective, but we've got tools that can do something else. So for me, the critical piece is that whilst we're looking to try and work out how we're going to replace maybe some of that hardware revenue, how we're going to replace some of that margin, there are certainly 3 different elements of the wallet that we can be poking and talking about. And actually, do you know what? We've realized that it will probably leverage upgrades or device changes and print management changes as well to further facilitate those things, because they're great infrastructure stuff. And you may even start to draw further revenues out of desktop and network services as well. Okay, so think the foundations, how we're going to do it. Most of our customers right now are going to tell you that their working from home strategy, or their Boyd strategy, or their document management strategy, whatever it might be, is going to be based on one of the 2 logos at the top. And the reality of that is, well, quite frankly, it's a bit like the kit car on the floor. Okay, yeah, they've got a bunch of very clever things in there. They've got a huge amount of performance, but actually, unless you're very skilled, you are not going to put that together in any particularly usable way. We are struggling right now. We are engaged in a project in Denmark, and I can tell you that we are wasting hours and hours and hours trying to survive with the Office 365 environment from the customer. And these customers are like that all the time. So they all have these infrastructure pieces, but they need a simple story. They are waiting for someone to come and talk to them and say, hey, do you remember the pain point that you've got every day with dealing with this? The underpinnings, the capabilities are there, but the actual day-to-day user pain, that's a very real thing. Okay. And if we look at this, 15% of all of the things that are going wrong that people were getting billed for by the ICO were to do with using email for transmission, or using unverified processes. These things where one process involves a user actually, say, scanning something to an email address and then saving it, dragging it to another email address. Those transactions result in 15% of all fines issued by the ICO is documents or data being shared to the wrong email address. And I bring this example up. Lots of you will have seen this lots of times, okay? But this is my kid's school. It was actually issued on the day GDPR came in, and it specifically states that as a workflow problem. The personal document was scanned using a photocopier. It was incorrectly stored because it was file save as on a desktop machine where it shouldn't have been, and then it was dragged onto an email and sent out to the entire parents list. And this is just one example. It happens all the time. 15% of all fines issued. In fact, the numbers are terrifying. Again, these aren't news. If you've been to a Selecttech WebEx, you will have seen these. These are the values and the number of documents, number of files that are in the wrong place, that are sent incorrectly, that are named wrong, or indeed are fined against. So from our perspective, let's give them something to build those tools into a proper usable resource, as opposed to just a pile of great functions that you've got to know your stuff to use. Let's really round that back out. And I kind of like some of the things that Steve Jobs came out with. Yes, he was nuts, but he does come out with something. And you guys are particularly good at this in terms of understanding the physical realities of this. Microsoft are not talking to the day-to-day Fred and Shed users asking where the problems lie. So do have a think about what those pain points look like and work backwards through those bits of data. And on that, I tried to get through it as quickly as possible so we could dive into it and actually go and take a look at a particular process. We're going to talk about Postrooms today because they're definitely overlooked, and all the solutions out there are hugely, well, not hugely expensive, but I think they're overcomplicated, and they don't necessarily need to be, which is kind of a cool thing. All right, so critical thing here, guys, is introducing a new toy. Now, I need to hold my hand up. I haven't got my webcam switched on, so you can't see, but I am actually holding my hand up to say that I had a really best laid plan to show you a new thing, which it's actually, we've had it for ages, we just forgot to tell anyone, a new thing from Selecttech, which was obviously designed in line with and with some interaction from our good friends at PaperCut. In fact, I don't know if there are any paper cutters on the call today, but PaperCut has an API to allow us to integrate the embedded client into the document management processes and capture engines and ECM tools that we have, notably the Square 9 product. I was going to show it to you live. It's a very cool piece of kit. Unfortunately, my MFD, which is a Lexmark 4150, for some reason won't allow me to run the scan actions. So if there are any Lexmark resellers out there that want to tell me what's going on with my device, that would be particularly nice. But what I did do is get my good friend Matt Green, one of our developers, to create a video for me. So you can see that the PaperCut client now has the ability for us to link directly into workflows and ECM using our global capture tool, which we will come on to. And we can start to hook that up, as you may have just seen, with custom fields that allow us to trigger workflows or deliver documents directly into a workflow or into a document repository archive. So it's not a very long demo, but you'll see if I click through it, I'm coming in, I have the scan connector. Let me just try and move this forward slowly so you can see. There we go. We can link up particular workflows. We can link up particular archives. This is a GC, stands for Global Capture. GS stands for Global Search. And we can send those through. And if I actually build this along and come a little bit further down the road, come on, like that. There we go. I'm going to click those. Sorry about this. We do have it live. You can see that I can add custom fields here, which I can put text into. I can change the settings of this. I can pre-populate these if I need to. And then I can bring those forward by typing the values in, just doing this super slowly. There we go. You can see me typing those values in, or rather Matthew typing those values in. And then as he starts to do that, we are actually going to scan that record. There it goes. It will go off. It will connect via the API into the Square 9 application set at the back. It will complete the scan. And as I come through, it will return me back to the scan menu. So tip top. All right. And then as I come back into this, you can see that within my global capture environment, within a batch portal that we're going to interact with right now, it's populating the values into the workflow that will allow me to start routing those. So please remember that, because that's where we're going to go in a little moment. So if I end the show now, hopefully we should be able to see a VM. Come on. Don't save that. There we are. And I'm going to pull up a virtual machine. I'm certainly hoping I'm going to pull up a virtual machine. Here we go. Hopefully you guys can see that to show that this thing is very real. Okay. You can see that this is the Selecttech. We're calling this a Selecttech Square 9 Gateway. And what it allows us to do is, if I look at the setup piece, you can see that I can configure the Square 9 locations. I can configure how the API works. The PaperCut API actually transmits via an email, but we hook it straight into the API of Square 9. We can map that into different Square 9 servers, a search or a capture and a capture environment, and configure that. And if I go into the home piece, you can see that I can take a look at all of the different global searching environments that I've got, or into the workflows, and I can see exactly, for example, the Postroom one that we were looking at right here. I can start to hook up the different fields that I might want to choose and link those together. So this middleware allows us to create these custom scan actions, which can be deployed onto the front end of the devices. You can see where they are. This is my Postroom one. My device doesn't particularly want me to play, to be fair, but it allows me to pick out those particular fields, hook them into the middleware by using this particular subject line that pulls that, and the data is sent via a JSON file in through PaperCut into my global capture front end. Now, the nice thing about this Selecttech integration from PaperCut into Square 9 is it will give us flexibility to grow functionality as the PaperCut API grows. So you're not buying a a dead duck. It can grow. The capability has been built into the code. You can run this application on a Mac, on Linux, on Windows. It's a fairly portable bit of kit, to be fair. And from a commercial perspective, we are offering this out at a very attractive purchase price for resellers, but with an expanded margin. So this thing allows you to build value back in. So if we think even without any back-end capture processes, you are now in a place where you could be talking to customers about doing some of that page processing or something along those lines. But rather than just being limited to the PaperCut OCR or the OCR plugin, which doesn't give you an opportunity really to leverage margins, you'd be able to upgrade that to a proper workflow capture solution driven from the PaperCut licenses that you already have in field. And that can drive more devices, device consolidation down to smaller distributed product, like working from home, because we're completely comfortable, by the way, to work from remote capture destinations. That's completely fine. And also for you to secure that PaperCut support and ongoing revenue as well. The critical piece is it's a conversation you can have to talk about expanding the capability of your PaperCut environment away from just print. It's there about using PaperCut then as a capture tool, as a workflow kickoff point to really start to design those processes for customers that need to get away from simple drag, drop, rename rubbish. So there we go. Okay, now, anyone who hasn't worked this out by now, we are the distributors of Square 9 Softworks. As we talked about in multiple webinars before, Square 9 is a suite of 4 different applications that sit either singularly as standalone tools or as one complete solution, and that goes end to end with every element that a customer might need for document processing, both from scanned paper original documents through digital, through e-forms and anything else. So we have capture, we have content management, ECM, document management, whatever you might want to call it. We have processing, workflow, BPA. It's really interesting at the moment that we're getting a lot more inquiries around BPA or BPM than we are around more traditional kind of solutions. This is really a critical part of the business for us right now. So if you guys get on the gravy train and talking to people about process automation, that's where an awful lot of focus is. And again, web forms. This is where Square 9 certainly are focusing. We're seeing a slow uptake of this because it's quite a difficult concept for a lot of customers to grasp, and because there isn't an easy solution. So forms is something that we see growing, but the bit that we're going to focus on today is capture, is stopping that file save as, email, inbox, outbox, save as, drag, drop rubbish that most people are trying to rely on, which is what the ICO are finding so many issues with and why people's business processes are so messy. So we're going to look at some capture automation. And we did talk a little bit about Postrooms, which is kind of why you were here. So I don't know if he's on the call today, but one of the Selecttech guys built something. He is Mr. Gill. He's muted, which probably means he's not listening at all. He's off doing something else, having a coffee.
No, I'm here. I'm listening.
Mr. Gill very kindly built me a workflow the other day because somebody needed to process and post. So this is a fairly standard thing, whether we like it or not. Small to medium businesses certainly, but also really large organizations, particularly within legal, financial services, utilities management, service bureaus, all of these guys still receive a very high level of incoming post. When we are talking about document management with specific focuses, things like accounts payable or HR, an awful lot of those records are digital. They are already arriving as PDFs into emails, and so we pick them up that way. And I think because before the pandemic, we kind of moved away from Postrooms in many instances, unless it was a very specific thing for large legal, for example. But this last week, I can tell you that the phone has rung a good few times and the email has binged, as I've said, with people specifically asking about how to tidy up their post. And the reason is the post is still coming into a specific location, and a lot of those users are working from home, or they have to reduce the number of workers that are actually attending the office. Now, the other thing about Post is it is paper. So a lot of organizations do not or cannot, depending on their COVID secure guidelines, move those documents around the business in paper format without quarantining them. Quarantine is supposed to be 72 hours, depending on your perspective. So you're talking about putting stuff in a room for 72 hours before anyone other than that person handling it can move it around an organization. Paper is suddenly broken and it hasn't gone away, and people now need to focus on it. And we have realized there are a lot of small to medium organizations who were scanning the post, but it's very time inefficient. They are scanning it, then to their email or to a folder, opening it, file, save as, rename. Remember, if they do that, then 35% of them named wrong or filed wrong or both. And you know, it just simply doesn't work, and you can't route it. So Nick built me a little workflow. In this case, it's working from a file or a folder, but I also could drive this. I'm doing the file or folder thing simply because me and my Lexmark MFD are having an argument. But I could drive this from my PaperCut embedded client that you can sell. It has a serial number and an SRP, so crack along there. And I can drive stuff into the workflow. And the critical piece is I want to avoid that open file save as could be an error type scenario from my user. So I'm going to mimic being my Lexmark. I'm not going to make the noises of my photocopier at this point, and I'm just going to copy these into a capture location. But I would be able to drive this simply by scanning into a watch folder, or of course using that PaperCut integration. And I'm going to turn on my workflow, and away she goes. Now, hopefully, if all things are equal, they've disappeared from that folder, and away they go. And Global Capture has this feature called validation portals, okay? And this is really critical because at this point, my whizzy pieces of paper have gone through my import location, which could be anywhere, by the way. And it is run through a set of values, it sets some rules on my document. If it doesn't recognize the document, it's going to bounce it all the way back through. And most importantly, that document can now not leave the workflow without a validated user logging into a portal and selecting what to do with the document. This isn't file, save as, give it a name, try and remember to put it in the right folder, or email, drag it, drop it, save it somewhere. All of those broken variables that 365 isn't going to help me with, that Google isn't going to help me with, that actual human process. So let's take a look at what a batch portal looks like. I'm going to go to Global Capture. I already have one open, but here we go. I'm coming into the Global Capture front end. It is a web page, so these guys could work from home. You could have someone scan it, and then the portal can go forward. And you can see that I have got 5 documents that I've dumped in that have gone into validation. And as I come in there, it will quite merrily show me the documents that need me to sort them out. I, of course, can filter this. Again, this shouldn't be news because if you guys have seen any of our stuff, we've talked about the importance of this in previous workflows. So let's take a look at what this user is doing. And I mentioned in the synopsis of this about hybrids. One of the fascinations with selling capture is that everything needs to be automated. We need to do automations. We need to do this. We need to do that. Actually, do you know what, guys? Small to medium organizations and even large organizations that have particularly unstructured content, like letters, for example, or like utility companies or like service organizations, the problem with full automation, template automation, is it's very expensive. It takes time. It is still subject to some level of validation, and it's a real big sell. It's a big project. You want something that you can sell and you can talk about quickly. So in this case, what I'm actually going to do is say, hey, look, these documents have arrived. It's told me that I've got some documents to validate. Normally, I would be opening a document, going file, save as, finding the correct file. But actually, that's a little bit painful. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to say, well, let's validate these. Let's go to Global Capture. And you can see that the documents come into my portal. I can see the files there. It's a little bit slow on my system because I still have a very old, very asthmatic Mac that is trying to run a virtual machine and a Zoom session and everything at the same time. But you can see here that I'm going to say, okay, that is actually it's a letter. And what I'm going to do with my key free is I'm going to say the surname. I've got this built on surnames right now, is that. and I'm going to turn off key free. I'm going to save that, and I'm going to say confirm the recipient. The document will disappear from my list. And here's my next one. I'm going to turn that one on. Again, same recipient. A little bit slow. This key free feature, oh, there we go. I'm going to say that one's an invoice. Okay, you can see that the system is now starting to pick up the data, and I'm just going to save it, and I'm going to confirm the recipient. And what's happening is we are going off looking at a data table. I'm going to disregard that one because it's unknown. So away we go. And I'm processing these. I'm not going file, save as. I'm not doing anything else. We can see that these things are actually happening. I don't really know. I'm just going to leave that one so you can see some of the, and let's click on a forename this time. And I'm just going, yeah, confirm the recipient. I could have as many different links in there as I might want to. I know that one's an invoice, so I've chosen that, and I'm going to, again, I'm not going to type anything because I'm not particularly into this. And you can see there that folder is doing something. We're going to come into what that looks like as well. And I'm going to save that one, confirm it. But this is a lot faster than file, save as, name, do whatever, drag to the right folder, which I know that 30% of the time I'm going to be getting wrong anyway. I'm not going to set that one. I am just simply going to click on the name, and I'm going to confirm those recipients. If I wasn't trying to multitask and talk at the same time, this would obviously be a lot faster. But you can see how that this process is now locked. The user isn't making mistakes. They're not saving something to the wrong folder because it is all locked in the workflow. And if I look at that, my queue is now gone. My work here is done. I can move on. But if I also just pull this up, you can see now these are the documents that we put through the process just now. Okay, let's get that little warning out because that will make some sense. All right. There we go. And you can see that these documents here, where I clicked on a particular value, Parks, it's come back, it's looked in a table, it's found the correct company in this case, because we did this for a managed demo, managed office demo. It's found the correct email address, it's found the forename for me, it's done things like that, which is super lovely. So it's gone off, very easy process. No file save as, no drag drop, click on a value, push go, it's doing the rest and routing it securely through that workflow. At no point is that document going to the wrong location. And if I take a look at that, let's see what that looks like. In fact, actually, let's just remember one further thing. Let's open some emails. Forgot to open this up, guys. But we sent some stuff out there, didn't we? You can see that we're receiving these alert emails. So you can see, dear Susan, you've found some, you've had some email. So again, I think Clive has got some stuff in there. He's got some emails as well. So the guys are receiving those emails to show that they're there. And if I take a look here, we should also be able to see in there, in the correspondence. Now I've got this running across multiple companies. You'll note that I ran one into unclassified or unrecognized as a catch-all. That was a choice I made, but now I know where it's going and it's text searchable and I could do stuff with that. If I go in here, you can see I routed some to a company folder for Selecttech. It's named them, it's given them the correct respondents, and I could build this structure, this file naming structure, however I might like by using the metadata that we have. And you can have more fields, by the way. We built this very simply. I'll say that was the royal we. It was my good friend, Mr. Gill, built this. We were only looking at some very simple forename, surname, document type, you know, pulling an email address. But you could build however complex you might want that to be. So that's kind of a nice thing. Is this now process again? We would have had to go through the drag, drop, file, save as, try and name correctly. And again, in Windows and Mac, frankly, there is no way that I can easily enforce a file name structure. So I could land up having to try and sort these with forenames and surnames the wrong way around, document types at the front, dates in an incorrect format. So they're very difficult to index away or to search or to view. But again, that file name right now, that's created for us, and we can control how it lands in the folder without the user needing to type any of those addresses in. So even though we're doing it in a hybrid way, what we're doing is allowing that Postroom operative to handle the documents with a locked, validated workflow, you know, super easily without any of the pain. And that's it's overlooked. Everybody thinks you need to go into massive automation. And to be fair, this product, you're talking about a sub £1,500 SRP product. But a really cool piece of it is that we have plugins that do the things like the database lookups. They're Selecttech plugins, and they have viable margins in them. So you can actually make good money off of this. And it will process 250,000 to 500,000 pages a year. It will do full page OCR. And again, if I wanted to, and someone really does want to do some automation, I'm going to take it up to the next level product, okay? And I'm just simply going to throw in a couple of templates in there, and I'm going to file save as. And this would take the product up to the next level. But if I run this workflow again, you should see in a moment. We'll actually do this. I'm pretending to be a Lexmark photocopier again. Okay, copy that. Pretend that I am an API, and away we go. I'm going to turn that workflow back on with the new setting. So the next level up. And whilst it sits and thinks about that, we're going to take a little bit of a look at something completely different. Because if you remember, I said the other place that it would be really nice to be able to get involved with those customers. So we've talked about some document processing, some OCR stuff. You can see that these documents are now automatically going through the system. Okay. Let's just turn these on. There we go. There we are. You can see that the post distribution that we just sent through, this next one, this one is automatically recognized because we turned on templating. We haven't bothered to template the letters, so the ones that can go through do by their template. The ones that don't, we could go across and validate in the way that we were before. So that's kind of cool, this hybrid thing. Recognize the ones you can, don't recognize the ones you don't. But it's, again, a lot faster. Let's just click on that. There we go. And route it, confirm the recipient, document gone, into validation. And you can see this blend of the ones that I've templated versus the ones that I'm clicking on. So let's expand this out a little bit further. So things are going to go a little bit off piste at this point. Hopefully the thing will behave itself for me. Come on, let's do it. It's a little bit slow. There we go. I am going to connect my iPhone. Hopefully I don't receive any text from my wife shouting at me whilst we're doing this piece. Come on. There we go. And we are live and direct. So here's my iPhone. Do you know what? I will prove that it is in fact my iPhone. Here I am. Hey guys, welcome to the shed. So let's just close that out. And let's just say I received my email, told me I've got some posts. I'm going to log into the very whizzy folder product. There we go. And I'm authenticating. I'm loading my files. There I go. Top of my list is my post. And there are the files that we just looked at. And these are the dates and times and everything. And I can come into this and I can take a look at my post, and it's now on my phone. Thanks very much. And so I'm expanding what I'm doing by making those shares available, by building a fixed workflow, and now putting that device or those documents easily in the hands without the person needing the VPNs. It doesn't matter whether those documents are in 365, in Google, on a Windows server, all the things that we've talked about with Folder before, it really doesn't matter, because I can now start to flatten that down. So one of the objections we get quite a lot is, well, I've got Microsoft 365 or I've got Google. Good for you, because basically every business in the world has one or the other. Selecttech, we like to go our own way. We're a Google customer rather than a Microsoft customer. The positive of that is that effect, there we go, handsome couple there. That's me on holiday. Best put those pins away, yeah. One of the real positives of this is you can talk to the customer about, or have you noticed that this functionality changes or that changes? How about you build your process and you make it work for you rather than needing to do anything else? So you can kind of see that if I take my process conversation back, file save as, we're not doing that anymore. We are very much locking documents very efficiently into a process to make sure that things are not saved in the wrong place. we are very much, let me just do this, let's bring this back up so you can see it. There we go. We are very much starting to say, well, we know you've got those MFDs and we know you've got some PaperCut. So let's use PaperCut to drop documents into image processing. Let's OCR those images. Let's use key-free indexing or templating to control where they are. And based on that, let's make sure they land in the right location, doing what they need to do. Using a DB lookup if you need to, using a workflow process that you can design. There we go. And then, do you know what, guys? Yes, of course, it can be in a file in a folder, as you saw on my Windows machine. I can see the files there, but I'd also like to be able to access those files working from home. I'd like to be able to see them on my mobile. Now, a lot of users, of course, say, well, you sent an email to tell me I had post, but why didn't you just attach the post? And the reality is, I don't want to do that because I do not want to be sending documents around emails where they could be forwarded, where I lose control of them, where I've not got version control, where I've not got any of those other things. So I might tell people, I might use email as a message, but I'm not going to use it as a mechanism for sharing, moving, or underpinning workflows because it's really not designed for that. It's not a good thing. A huge percentage of businesses use it for that, but that doesn't mean that it's a good idea. Okay, so I'm going to spin forward. So now we've taken all of those tools, the ability to move files and folders and wrapped a process around them that gets us away from those costly errors, gets us away from those big problems, starts to give the sales guys the conversations that these customers will agree. They will tell you that, yes, we do this. Yes, we do this. Yes, we do this. We've started to talk about those user experiences and how they can use the technology they already have to do a better job. Those MFDs, well, why don't we switch that one big MFD out for smaller MFDs that can be distributed and use the fact that PaperCut that we gave you, which is such a viable tool, can be used across multiple devices in different locations. And then let's give you a nice unified front end that you can train on. This video would be all you need to do, in fairness, as a training video, just with your own screen capture. So you can see, and again, in terms of using batch portals, you don't need to train people with a big thing of, file, save here, do that, do this. The batch portal is going to lock documents into a workflow, and you are going to know who has sent documents where they're supposed to go. So the last piece of my agenda before I come down into the end of this thing, I think it was 10:30 to 11:30, so I kind of want to finish on time. All right, was where are we looking for this? What rocks are we turning over? Okay, what advantages or where are we at? All right. I think one of the big things for us right now is the next big thing is small things. It's the ability to distribute stuff from that central hub, to be able to talk to customers about, right, how am I processing that information? I don't necessarily want to rip out their hardware. I don't want to undo their leases. I don't want to undo those things. But what I want to do is to be able to add things in that can create margin for me when lease contracts we need renewing, for example, or as boxes distribute out, to keep that glue in place, to own those processes from beginning to end. Stop just being the photocopier guys, start being the process guys, start being the security guys, those guys. So this ability to distribute, or say, well, why don't we, remove some hardware, but actually put in a smaller machine, or put it, distribute some smaller devices and push that margin into other viable sources that, by the way, are enormously sticky. They are perfect upgrade products, which is lovely. The questions are much more simple than they were. You don't need to understand the ins and outs of accounts payable or HR process or whatever. This is very much, simple questions around stuff you know the answer to. It's going to be yes. Do you have to rename files as document storage? Yes, you do. The Magnificent Seven, if you like. Do you use different types of devices? Yeah, just change the vocabulary a little bit from sharing, audit trail, all of those good stuff. All right. So we come back to a revised why. Okay, why are we doing things like this? Why are we starting to put little components in to improve on that PaperCut environment and improve on the hardware profile that you've already got out in the field? And in reality, the why for us is that we've got our PaperCut product, we sell Square 9, we sell the marvelous folder product, these unicorn things, the Square 9 and folders. And to be fair, PaperCut was our biggest unicorn of all when we found it. There are many mirrors, but when we found it, it was a very unique and original thing in the way that it worked. So we've got our unicorns, but what we've done in Selecttech is we've created tools that you can find if you talk to our account managers that enable more commercial engagement. So we have the Selecttech PaperCut API gateway. So that is a tool. It has a buy price. It's a very reasonable buy price, but it has margins in it. So you can start to upgrade and work on this PaperCut environment and generate more product and margins from your customer engagement. Same with Square 9. The Square 9 product is awesome and it comes at a really low price point, but we have the tools like the gateway, like the call assemblies that we can bundle to generate margins to help you guys make a really attractive proposition of the capture and workflow piece that we were looking at. And again, with folder, you can sell folder at an enormously low price point, but we've also included some hardware options for you to allow you to build really strong commercial propositions, and also to help those customers that don't have the infrastructure to do this kind of stuff. So for us, it's about making sure that, yes, we have the clever technology, the unicorn products, but we also have the margin and the commercial tools set above each level to make them viable. Why 2.0? Okay, the critical piece for us is making sure that the price is right from a customer perspective. These are deals they can afford. You know, these are products that are not £1 million. They're not full automation with 5 figures and a 6-month project time. Nick built that workflow for us in a morning, I believe, and you could implement that same workflow in probably about half an hour because it's portable. And then making the SRPs, the margins, the support process, the install process, how you need it to be to actually get these things in there. So the price is right.